And we'll get started. So I noticed that Jim Langford, SHEP's Executive Director, is here with us. So Jim, if you would like to say a few words and welcome us, turn it over to you first, and then we'll go into introductions of our panelists.
Great, thank you. It looks like I unmuted myself just in the nick of time. Thank you, Danielle, we appreciate that. Yeah, this is a fun event tonight, and I wish I could stay on for the whole thing, but I can't. I got to go off on another. I've been on Zoom calls all day long, and I got another one right after that at about 6:45 or 7 o'clock. But I'll stay on for a little bit because I want to hear what you all have to say, and I am so glad that you are helping us and participating with us, our panelists. I've read your bios. I'm very impressed. I would like to stay on and hear everything you've. I'll listen to the recording. How about that? I promise. But thank you for participating. I've been really excited about the past few months with SHEP, with the new programs that we've been able to put into place, thanks to Danielle and her hard work on alumni programs, career track type programs, those kinds of things. We think really add a lot. It tells our story well. It helps add cohesiveness to our alumni base and creating more of an identity of who we are and what we do. That it's not just for undergrads, it's for a whole trajectory of career opportunities for people out there and ways for SHEP to continue to add value in our SHEP constituents and alums to continue to add value. So thank you. I'm from Georgia. I'm here in Georgia tonight. That's where I grew up. I did spend time in Boston in business school up there at Harvard in the, some say on the wrong side of the river, depends on your perspective up there, but I'm proud of it. I enjoyed my time in Boston very much and still go back a good bit. And but I run a number of nonprofits, still do run 2 or 3 different ones. Spend 98% of my time though on SHEP related activities. Did a lot of work in substance abuse work, helping with a Georgia methamphetamine project, big one, anti-methamphetamine project we got started, we've been very successful with, and then morphed that into opioid and heroin work the past few years as well. I ran technology companies 20 years ago for a while. Well, it wasn't 20 years ago, but I did it for 20 years. I'm not quite that old, yet. But anyway, but I've enjoyed this work the past year. I've been executive director for a year now of SHEP, and it's been a terrifically rewarding year. A lot of hard work, to try to get a new strategic plan in place. That's one that we're on a 5-year process, and we're in our 5th year working on the new plan that would start in January 1st. And so we've got some exciting things going on with that as well. So that's enough about me and enough about, what we've been up to. I want to hear more from you all and for what we're going to hear from tonight about the career program in law. And by the way, my father was a lawyer for 50 years in my little hometown, was on the board of bar examiners in Georgia and was part of the really deeply embedded in the law community in Georgia. So I have great respect for you and for people who are in that profession. So thank you for participating.
Thank you, Jim. And just a little bit about me before we get started. I'll be moderating tonight's panel. I'm Danielle Breidung, a SHEP alumna and a graduate of Washington and Lee University. I'll tell you the answers to the first questions the first question I'll ask the panelists, just so you can get a feel for things. So I'm from Wisconsin originally, and right now I'm attending the University of Georgia. I'm pursuing a Master of Social Work. And when I'm not doing that, I'm working with SHEP as the Alumni Engagement Specialist, which allows me to facilitate fun programs like this. So thank you so much again for joining us. And I'll start by posing the same string of questions to our panelists, which begins with your name, where you're from originally, where you did your undergrad, and where you attended law school. So Ash, let's start with you.
Hey everybody, my name's Ash Smith. I'm from the New Haven, Connecticut area. Originally, I went to Notre Dame for undergrad, and I'm currently attending Harvard Law School. I am a 2L, but I'm in a JD PhD program, so it's my 4th year overall in the program.
Thank you. Jonathan?
My name is Jonathan Lockwood. I'm originally from a little town about 50 miles west of Savannah, Georgia called Hagen, which has about 1,000 people in it. I went to undergraduate at the University of Georgia, and I went to law school at Washington and Lee. So I took the opposite path of Danielle.
Yeah.
And did I get them all?
You satisfied them. Yes,
Oh.
thank you. All right, Camie, you're up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Camie Carlock. I am originally from Dallas, Texas, and that is where I am now practicing law. I graduated from Washington and Lee in 2013 and worked for 2 years before attending law school at the University of Texas at Austin.
Thank you. So this one is a throwback in a way to the days of undergrad when you were thinking about doing summer internships. And I'd like to know why you wanted to do a SHEP internship, when you did it, where your placement was, and what was your biggest takeaway. So we'll go in reverse order this time and start with you, Camie.
All right, why I wanted to do a SHEP internship. I mean, it definitely first was posed to me because it's a graduation requirement with the poverty minor at Washington and Lee. But obviously, I think it was the most beneficial component of my experience with the Shepherd program, and truly to immerse myself, get myself out of my comfort zone, and just really have a better understanding of going beyond what we were reading in class and courses, and you can study all you want, but you just really have to be immersed in the issue at hand. I participated in summer of 2011, so it was after my sophomore year, and I was with In Street Village. It's a women's homeless shelter in Washington, D.C. I grew up, or I guess really more at end of high school, I took AP government and was sold on political science and history. And so politics was ultimately my major at Washington and Lee. And so I was really energized about wanting to be in DC, the city where it all happens. And so I actually participated in a Capitol Hill internship for the 6 weeks prior as a Maymester type program that Washington and Lee has before transitioning right into my In Street Village internship, which I think was really cool, seeing two very different sides of the city, and seeing where policy is made and then seeing where policy can be better implemented, just as far as the resources available. And so biggest takeaway was getting to know homeless women personally. And beforehand, growing up in Dallas, to me, homeless people were standing at the intersection with a cardboard sign, or living under an underpass, and to understand and appreciate that each person has a story and no one chooses to be homeless, and that it's such a multifaceted issue. And to even meet people who at that time, the economic downturn was only a few years prior. So meeting women that had careers and great employment opportunities. And then between the economic downturn of the 2008 financial crisis, losing the death of a spouse, they wound up homeless. And so really opening not only my mind, but my heart to understanding and not judging when I see homeless people.
Thank you.
So I did my Shepherd internship while I was in law school, in my second year of law school at Washington and Lee. And I became interested in that because it was a way for me to find a way for placement, to work with people that have in poverty, particularly in rural areas, which is something I've always been interested in. I worked in the London Trial Office, which is located in London, Kentucky. So it's in southeastern Kentucky. And the biggest takeaways I had from working there were two of them. The first was how bad the substance abuse issues were in that part of Kentucky at the time, particularly methamphetamine. It was shocking to me when I walked into the courthouse in Harlan County, and 98% of the people in the courtroom had severe substance abuse issues. And that was a shocking takeaway for me. The other was how the deck was so strongly stacked in favor of the prosecution. There it would be the Commonwealth. In most places they call it the state, but it was just it was a life altering experience for me for those two reasons.
Yeah, so I actually worked at the same place as Jonathan in the summer of 2015, which was after my sophomore year. And I think for me, so my first summer in college, I worked at the Bethany Catholic Worker House in upstate New York. And many of the women there, this is an emergency homeless shelter for women and children. Many of the women had come straight out of Rikers and had miscellaneous criminal records, sorts of issues, active cases and so forth that they were dealing with. And I wanted to kind of better understand how poverty and the law intersect. And SHEP was an amazing opportunity and way to do that because it, offered these internships that I, wasn't seeing in other places for undergrads to be able to go in and work at a public defender's office. I mean, that's something that, is a real special privilege. So I wanted to do SHEP for that reason. Ended up at the same place as Jonathan. And I think my takeaways were very similar in a lot of ways. Looking at the drug issues, the massive power disparity between the prosecutor and the defense was very shocking to me. I had no idea that, 99% of cases or whatever it is are pled out, which means that the prosecutor has essentially all of the power in determining a lot of, criminal sentences. For me too, another kind of large takeaway from that experience was just better understanding the criminalization of poverty in general and how many of our crimes and the criminal code is kind of built around having or not having economic privilege, right? So even just going to a court date in Kentucky, the court fees were like $143. So even if you had a $20 traffic ticket, you'd be paying $163 in total. And if you don't pay that, you have these fines and fees that stack up. You can end up in jail because you have unpaid fines and fees. And that was all, deeply, deeply shocking to me. And it really ended up, motivating my career. So now I'm doing a JD PhD essentially to study the criminalization of race and poverty and the intersection of those two issues now. But, yeah.
And that leads into the next question, which is, what did you do after you graduated from undergrad? And then the second part is, did you always know you wanted to pursue a career in the law? Or was that something that occurred to you after maybe your SHEP internship? So Jonathan, I'll start with you because you did the SHEP internship during law school. So I'd be curious to know, when you went to UGA, did you think you were going to law school after the fact?
I went straight into law school after I graduated from Georgia, so that I just had the summer off. I did not know when I started undergrad or until really late in my junior year that I wanted to be an attorney. Originally, I actually wanted to get a PhD in Byzantine history, Eastern Roman Empire history of all things. And that was a pretty big shift, I guess you could say. Went to law school at Washington and Lee, and then just really enjoyed that. I think that answered the question.
Yeah. So what changed your mind? I mean, I know W&L is historic and stuff, but that seems like a big pivot.
I took some split level classes, some undergraduate level coursework at Georgia, and all of the people in history and philosophy were having difficulty finding anything remotely resembling gainful employment. And I decided I may want to try to find that at some point in my life.
Fair. What about you, Ash? What did you do after Notre Dame?
Yeah, so I went straight through. So I graduated in 2017, and then I started my 1L year right after, and then did 2 years of PhD work, and now I'm doing my 2L year. So yeah, didn't really take that much time off. I think in large part because of the kind of summer experiences that I was, able to have the privilege of having to kind of come to understand that I think law is, what I do want to do in my career, hopefully at this point. But yeah, and I don't know. I think I ended up, being pushed in a legal direction. And, again, in large part, just because of the experiences that I was having, working at the homeless shelter, seeing all these women who came in with legal issues. I mean, these were not issues that I could resolve necessarily by working at a direct services center, not to discount those places in any way, but it just felt like we were putting Band-Aids on problems that required a bigger fix. And then going to, the public defender's office in London, Kentucky, it was fascinating to get to see how much power lawyers can have in really transforming people's lives in material ways. And then I also ended up working at Indiana Legal Services while I was an undergrad during my senior year, and that was a civil legal aid institution. And even that, in the civil sphere, where we were helping people to get record expungements, helping people with immigration sorts of issues, that as well just seemed like a real place to have a kind of tangible impact where I could see myself putting my skills to use. So I was really persuaded to enter the law based on all of those experiences.
All right, Camie, what did you do during those 2 years?
So out of self-preservation and not wanting to academically burn out, I took 2 years off after undergrad. And for anyone listening on the video, like, I'm happy to discuss that decision, because I don't think it doesn't hurt. There's no wrong way to do that, whether you go straight in or take some time off. And for me, law school is definitely always in the back of my mind. But you read articles and people tell you don't go to law school unless you really want to go. And so by my senior year of college, I hadn't taken the LSAT, and I was thinking,
Is she frozen for everyone else? Yeah. Well, she did say she was thinking, so she's taking her time. Hate when that happens. Well, I have a follow-up question while her Wi-Fi is getting resolved. Ash, do you see yourself practicing public interest law when you graduate?
Yeah, so I do. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that means. I've taken my kind of legal summers to explore a couple of different paths in that respect. I can let Camie go, or I can, I don't know, finish after.
Go ahead, finish that thought, and then we'll circle back around.
Okay. Yeah. So I worked at the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law after my 1L summer, which is an impact litigation and legislative advocacy organization in Chicago, and was really intrigued by that sort of work. So impact litigation is, the idea that you can kind of take a bunch of people with similar claims and resolve an issue at a systemic level as opposed to an individual level. The relative merits of doing that sort of work or doing more individual client-based sort of.
So Camie, I asked Ash while you were getting back with us that if she was planning to pursue public interest law when she graduates, and it sounds like it's a possibility. Like, what the exact nature of that will be is undetermined at this point, but leaning that direction.
I apologize. My Zoom just closed.
Oh, you're fine. This
Of course, when I'm talking.
I know, we were
Yes.
just joking because you paused like mid-thought, and so it was like you really were thinking about whether to go to law school or not, so it was quite apropos.
Oh gosh.
We were
Well,
thinking hard about that decision.
very hard. So I'll just finish that last question quickly about did I always want to pursue a legal education? And so mostly for a while I was thinking, well, you hear all these horror stories and people go to law and then go to law school and then they have these legal careers, but then you read about the number of people that are, recovering attorneys, or, oh, I started out as a lawyer, but then I pivoted into media or pivoted into this completely different industry. And I was thinking, well, do I really want to go to law school if that might be me? But I interned separately the summer after my freshman year with the domestic violence shelter here in Dallas that I'm still involved with on their young professionals board, and talking with their staff attorneys and different contacts of just asking, this was a former attorney that assisted them pro bono. She was actually with North Texas Legal Aid. Their in-house attorney department was not yet formed, but asking her, okay, I'm trying to avoid going to law school, but I want to be able to be, taken seriously as a woman and able to help. What is the most effective way? And, you know, I'm interested in policy and kind of the DC side of things. And ultimately, between her advice and then also just talking to other people, and then through my job as well, I realized, okay, I'm trying to avoid going to law school for 3 years and having to take a bar exam. I was very scared about all that. But thankfully, obviously, I survived and passed. So if anything, you know, yes, law school is an investment of your time and financial resources, but, you know, hopefully it is a career and a lifetime ahead of putting in those 3 years or a few more if you're doing a really cool dual degree like Ash is.
So it was worth it.
Yes.
And I'm curious, Jonathan, let's start with you about the type of law that you practice, what influenced your decision, and where you practice.
So I am currently the Chief Assistant Public Defender in the Brunswick Judicial Circuit, which is in Southeast Georgia. It recently came in national news because of the Ahmaud Arbery case down here. I've been practicing in this area for 8 years, or it'll be 8 years. Yes, 8 years this month. And before that, I worked for 2 years with the Public Defender's Office in an adjacent circuit in the Middle Circuit. So I'm a career public defender. Represent almost exclusively felony cases. I don't do juvenile work anymore, so it's all adults accused of felonies and mostly pre-conviction work, but some post-conviction as well, some appellate work. Working in the London trial office definitely influenced that decision. As I kind of said earlier, it was kind of a life-altering moment for me when I realized how the government has all the power, or the state, Commonwealth, whatever you want to call them. So I kind of dedicated myself to fighting for the people that don't have very much power, and trying to get fair results for them in a system that is, in my opinion, not particularly just at times.
Wow. Thank you. And Camie, what about you? And you can talk about the pro bono work you do as well, if that's part of your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I do work for a large firm, and it was interesting going into law school and feeling like there was this big divide between big law, as they call the large law firms, big law sellouts, and public interest, you know, people that are interested in public interest legal careers. And so for me, it was very tough at first to think, well, I do want the big law training that comes with the amount of time you put into it and the opportunities that come with that. But I do also want to continue to make an impact because I did not go to law school just for myself. I mean, I think I've always been someone where I like being involved in the community, feeling like I'm able to give back, especially with the resources I have, which now include being licensed in Texas. And so I do work for a large firm. I do corporate energy transactions. I really did not want to do litigation. I just had major anxiety over that and just knew that wasn't my personality. So I enjoy the collaborative nature of my day-to-day work, but I'm also involved in several pro bono both within my firm. I'm involved with several of our immigration asylum cases that we have. The firm really got more involved in that, I believe it was the summer of 2018, as that was really making national headlines. And so we still have a number of pro bono clients that I assist in that respect. And then we also have what we call our Pipeline Initiatives Committee, where we partner with local Dallas ISD high schools and that are very much like a career readiness track. And so we partner as an industry sponsor, excuse me. So not only showing these students, you know, what it's like to be a lawyer, but also the huge operation on the back end that people often don't see, including, you know, everyone from the payroll staff to HR to marketing, all the opportunities that come with working in a law firm that don't just require having a JD. And I mentioned also my interest in domestic violence work. I participated in our clinic when I was at UT Law for the domestic violence clinic. And I very much enjoyed that. And again, my not liking litigation does make that challenging at times, because it's not like I'm a full-time family lawyer here, but I am very involved with Genesis Women's Shelter here in Dallas, their Young Professionals Board. I'm the underwriting chair for the Young Professionals group for our committee this year, as they are preparing to build a whole new facility separate from the actual shelter, which is at an undisclosed location. But this facility is where Genesis has their own in-house legal staff, their therapists, meeting rooms. So to what Ash was saying earlier, there's so, not just a Band-Aid, but a lot, many layers of issues to be addressed and corrected. So it's tough. To Jonathan's point about representing folks without power. And, it's been very interesting to be, I don't have a business background, so being in the business world like this has been very eye-opening the past 2 years. And, while sometimes I think people can feel very jaded quickly by helping sometimes the most powerful, when you think, what did I go to law school for? It is, I at least, maybe I'm wrong. I think people can have different views on this, but I personally am glad to be in my position where I am right now, because I feel like it, with the power that comes with saying, I work at XYZ law firm, I went to this law school. I mean, it's just like when we applied to college and you have all these markers on a resume of credibility, and having a JD working at, no matter where you work, I mean, it's a signaling factor to people. And I've been able to relay what Genesis Women's Shelter does to our clients and to other, my peers from law school and other firms around Dallas and across Texas. So I am grateful to have those opportunities, and I'm excited to see where my career takes me too.
I turned myself on mute so that I would listen more attentively. So my next question addresses something that Camie brought up, which was some of the challenges and maybe some of those like internal voices and conflicts that you might wrestle with as you pursue this path. So I'm wondering, Ash, like from a student's perspective, have you, and certainly Jonathan and Camie chime in here, but like as you're in the process of pursuing this arguably, arduous career path and an educational course, have you ever thought to yourself, like, what am I doing? And if that comes up for you, what do you do about it? How do you handle it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think, I'm kind of, I suppose, dealing with this sort of tension a lot now, because I'm thinking about what I want to do, after I graduate. But it's interesting. So when you're a law student, right, you have all these loans that can be so kind of daunting in your head. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be this large debate among those kinds of, like Camie was mentioning, like the public interest crowd versus the big law crowd or whatever, about, if you go the public interest route, how are you going to pay off your loans? Which I think is one of the big challenges that just all law students have to kind of figure out. That said, there are a bunch of, I think, ways to make that actually easier than I had anticipated going into it. So there's, a ton of scholarship sorts of programs, fellowship sorts of programs, which I just, I don't know if anyone is applying to law school and is daunted by the tuition, but I think it's not as undoable as it seems. Like you can certainly do public interest, given all of that. But yeah, I don't know, in terms of, I guess, the kind of existential debate of like, what am I doing? I think perhaps I'm just not jaded enough yet. But as a student, I feel like I'm getting kind of more excited by the possibilities that you can have in the legal world. Even just as a law student, being able to work at a clinic where you get to represent clients yourself as a 20-something who just graduated and doesn't know anything. That's an incredible like power and privilege. And I just think, I don't know. I'm feeling a bit optimistic right now. So perhaps Camie and Jonathan might shed more light on the challenges faced, especially after law school. But yeah,
that's really helpful. Feel free to jump in, Jonathan or Camie, if you have existential crises or if you've faced challenges and how you've overcome them. either in the career path or even in the legal education time of like those 3 years at law school?
So I guess I'll start with kind of maybe a little bit different. Like when I first started was I graduated from law school in 2010, and I was really excited to get to be a public defender. So I didn't have that moment then. I actually had it shortly after I started, which was in Swainsboro, Georgia, and I can remember two moments that were very disturbing to me, kind of when I was like, oh, it kind of shook me. Can I do this? The first was when I got my caseload, because I had a caseload of around 300 and something cases, and I had been practicing law for all of a week. And it's just a staggering number. I mean, you have 300 people you're defending, and you don't. And I remember one of the first times I met with a client, they were sitting, I didn't have offices there. We just had cubicles. So I was in my cubicle, basically, listening to a client describe their criminal problem, or their alleged criminal problem. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, you really need to talk to a lawyer about this. And then it dawned on me, oh, wait, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the imposter syndrome, at least I think it's so real, both in law school and in working. Because yeah, we get our JDs and then you pass the bar and then people say, oh, law school teaches you how to think, but not actually how to be a lawyer. And so I think there's a lot of moments of self-doubt and opportunities to question, am I qualified? Am I capable? When is like the joke going to be, the partner or the client realizes, oh, what are they doing here? But I think, with the legal profession, because no matter what career path you choose, it is a shared experience of enduring through that first year of law school, enduring through all 3 years of law school, enduring through the bar exam. And so it's awful that you have to go through all of these rites of passages, but that's what they are. And they are hurdles into what is thankfully a very, I still Pollyanna of me, but, a noble profession. And I think one of the keys to overcoming those moments of self-doubt is seeking out mentors. And I wish I had taken more initiative to just contact either alumni, both of my undergrad or my law school, where I saw their bio on a website, whether it's a law firm or a nonprofit organization, and just, ask them for 15 minutes of their time. You can call them now. Zoom and WebEx are just so common. I wish I had thought, oh, if they don't want to talk to me, they'll tell me no, and so I think most people, are willing to give, especially just 15 minutes of their time, and just offer you either, whether it's, you talk one time and you kind of feel like, oh, I don't know if we really, hit it off, but it could really, turn into a meaningful relationship. And I think having those people that have gone through what can be a struggling experience that you're enduring right now in law school, or taking the LSAT, or filling out all those law school applications, those were such great reminders of me of, oh, that's someone I really admire, and I want to have a career that, models that. And the cool thing about a law degree is there's a lot of things you can do. So it's not like you just say, oh, I must follow what this person did. So that can be annoying sometimes when you're type A and you just want to plan, but obviously it's also very freeing, because you think, okay, well, I have a lifetime ahead of me in this job. So, certainly don't want to get bored too quickly.
You can pivot. That is a huge blessing. That's right. What are some things you wish you would have known before you went to law school, or before you accepted your current job or a previous job that you may have had? Jonathan?
Things I wish I would have known before I went to law school. Legal writing was completely different than any of the writing I did in undergraduate. And it's just you have to completely rethink the way you write and the way you analyze problems. I think that was probably the biggest thing I wish I would have known before I went to law school. As to the practice of law, I think maybe That's a harder one. I guess the biggest thing I wish I would have known would have been how to deal with when you're constantly told about other people's, as an attorney, particularly as a public defender, constantly you're being told about other people's stressful events in their lives again and again and again, hundreds of times per month, and try to find some way to learn how to deal with that, whether that be compartmentalize it some way or find ways to deal with that and cope with that in terms of not building the stress up within you as much.
What strategies have you discovered? That seems like $1 million question.
I really try to compartmentalize that. So I have, when I'm in the office, I'm in a certain mode and I'm going to deal with those issues in the office. And then when I leave the office, I do not take my work home with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm real big on that. Now I'll stay in the office and work as late as I need to. I'll come back to the office and work, but I will not take my work home with me at all. That's just I will not do it.
Mm-hmm. So you have a really strong boundary. Thank you. Ash or Camie, things you would have liked to know before you went to law school or before you started practicing?
I think really understanding and appreciating, especially my 1L year, that, yeah, we're all bright and talented. It takes a lot to get into a law school, but also recognizing that there's not always, or rarely is there, one right answer when a professor cold calls you. And just because, not being afraid to get it wrong. I have, been perfectionistic since I can remember, since middle school, and having to really overcome that, or attempt to, still, recovering perfectionist, if you will. But recognizing that with law school, you're not going to get it right all the time. There's a reason when, you ask a lawyer something and they're not going to give you a yes or no answer. They'll say it depends. So really getting comfortable in that lack of certainty, if you will, both career-wise, being in law school. Okay, what's next? What are my opportunities after I graduate? But then just even in the day-to-day class of like, okay, I've prepped as much as I can, and lightning is not going to strike me when I walk out of this classroom, even if the professor cold called me and I got it wrong. So
Putting it into perspective.
Yeah, I guess one thing to kind of add to this, being a law student right now, I think I'm kind of doing quite a bit of extracurriculars, which I didn't really set out to do, but kind of just said yes to everything, which, in terms of not wanting to, bring your work home with you and things like this, is probably less good. But at the same time, it's incredible the amount of opportunities that you have while a law student. So like I've done some work with the criminal justice policy program, which is this like semi-academic, semi-clinical program at Harvard Law School. And as part of that, me, one other student, and an attorney have been working with the South Carolina Supreme Court to like redo their bail system, which is insane that like as a law student, you can, have that amount of influence. And, probably not proper. None of us are from South Carolina, but I don't know. I feel like, I've been really kind of humbled and incredibly, feeling just so grateful for all the opportunities that you have at law school. And I feel like it's, I'm very glad that I was able to kind of take advantage of at least some of them, but I'm sure there's even more out there. And I think, the classwork is important, and, making sure you know the material so you can be a good, zealous advocate, I'm sure is important. But at the same time, like if you go to law school to make a difference, you don't have to wait until you graduate to make that difference. You can start doing so even while you are a student. And I think that's, been really important just getting me through it, mentally and on that kind of level as well.
That is really exciting. So we covered sort of this idea of advice. If you have anything to add, advice for SHEP alums, feel free to incorporate that. But I want to pose one other question before we open it up to the group. And that is where you see yourself in 5 years, which I know is like a typical interview question, but I do think it's relevant, especially in these times. to know what is on your heart and mind in terms of your future contributions or impact.
I'm happy to start.
Sure.
I see myself still in Dallas, and more likely than not, still practicing law at my law firm. And I mean, one thing that I was hoping for when I was looking at, going through the on-campus interview process and everything was opportunities. I never wanted to do something that would narrow my opportunities. And working at the firm I'm at, I see myself, there are great opportunities, whether I want to stay here and make this my career, if I want to go in-house somewhere, if I want to leave law altogether. I work for a firm that has a great reputation. I've been learning under incredibly brilliant people. And one thing I really love about my firm is its emphasis on its ties to our community. We're the largest Dallas-based firm. And so our founders, and including our most senior partners, their careers have been extensively involved in our community and not just being lawyers at a law firm. And so the great thing is, so I say I'll be in Dallas. I mean, there's always, who knows what opportunity could come up. But for now, I'm at least grateful knowing that in 5 years, there are good options because I am a lawyer and because this degree gives you a lot of different opportunities.
Jonathan, do you think you'll be a 15-year public defender by then?
I believe I will. I don't know where I will be because sometimes, opportunities arise in various places. And as a public defender, it's hard to know exactly where those are going to be. I would like to be working somewhere in rural Georgia, since that's still my passion. But I don't know exactly where. I'm very happy here. And if it's in Jessup, I'll be happy in 5 years. But I'm confident I will be. I really enjoy being a public defender. It's a very rewarding line of work. And I will be somewhere as a 15-year public defender.
Yeah, so I'm kind of very much in the process of figuring this out, but hopefully some sort of client-focused work, which has some kind of impact. Yeah.
That's great. So we got a question from Tomas, who actually had to run off to, oh, there you are. Tomas, do you want to ask them directly?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. So I had the chance to intern with the Richmond Public Defenders from Richmond, Virginia this summer. I actually extended my internship and I'm continuing to do it for the rest of the semester. I am a junior at Hamilton College. I'm doing a double major in econ and Hispanic studies, but I'm interested in law. And I was wondering if I could reach out to some of you to have an informational interview after the presentation, given all your very diverse backgrounds, but also especially your work with, public defenders and nonprofits.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Does anyone else who's out there, LeGrand, Rebecca, Andrew, Connie, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you with us for our Careers in Law panel. If you have a question, feel free to turn your camera on and unmute yourself or send one in the chat. If not, I will pose one other question that was on my mind. Jonathan was, oh, hey, welcome. How are you? LeGrand, good to see you.
Oh, hi. Well, yeah, I was just gonna, maybe this is for Ash, but maybe also for Camie. Because both of y'all mentioned, well, so actually, let's hold on. I'm sorry, I haven't formed this in my head yet. But Ash, when you were working for the Shriver Center, you mentioned that they have, and I mean, I'm very familiar with Shriver Center, but they do have this kind of legislative impact side and the impact litigation side. Was there one side that you were more drawn to, and why? And then also, maybe I'll take Danielle's question and say, like, where do you see yourself in 15 years? Is there a longer term goal for you?
Yeah, so on the kind of impact litigation slash legislative advocacy sort of point, they're very, very similar. And at Shriver, at the very least, pretty much all the attorneys were working on both sorts of issues. For me, I find myself more drawn to the impact litigation sort of side of things. And that's in part because, so, I mean, it depends on what kind of case you're doing, right? And at what level, like what court you're working with or whatever. But a lot of, when we talk about impact litigation, we're often referring to like federal appellate law, which will impact presumably, you know, the whole nation in some way. Whereas a lot of legislative advocacy work might be more state specific or, you know,
Right.
even at a lower level. So to me, the former is more kind of exciting. That said, it's a bit more difficult to do. And I think this is something that I'm still kind of trying to figure out in my own career. So when we talk about impact litigation, they're essentially the ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund. Like there are very few firms that really have the resources to do it very well and at a high scale. So the Shriver Center actually has a bit fewer resources to do that. So for the impact litigation that we were doing there, we were partnering with firms like Camie's firm, perhaps, and doing
Right.
where they were doing, you know, this is pro bono. So, you know, if you want to do impact lit, I think the options to do it if you want it to be, you know, your 40-hour a week sort of job, it seems that there are fewer places at which you can do it. But that said, to me, it seems to have a bit of a bigger impact.
Okay. Yeah. And sorry, full disclosure. I'm a lawyer and I work in state government and I'm doing legislative reform. So I'm wondering, you know, what.
That's great.
Yeah. But
sure
also, I mean, No, I mean, I also like just passed the bar in May. So like I say, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer as of Friday. So, yeah, thank you. I'm still thinking about which direction I want to go, you know, whether I want to stay in state government for the long haul or do impact litigation. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, LeGrand. And thanks for being here. I mentioned to them before we jumped on with everybody else that you are going to be a panelist, hopefully in an upcoming careers in government panel. So thanks for coming and observing how this works. We're still figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, of course. It's a great event. Thanks.
I do have a question about identities. So sometimes we think about the work that we do and ourselves, like what we bring into this space, whether we're female or male or non-binary, whether we're, you know, older or younger, white, black, like whatever. And I'm wondering how your identities, whatever they may be, impact the work that you're doing or your interactions with clients. Maybe not at all.
I'll take a shot at it. I think it definitely does impact the way I interact with my clients. And you know, some of that is what you bring in is not just obviously, you know, part of it is your background and things like that, and also part of that is your personality. And I've had to kind of realize that as a public defender, I am a trial lawyer, I'm a litigator, and there's a certain personality subtype that you are when you're in that mode. And that's something I have to be conscious of when I meet some of my clients, particularly the ones that haven't had experience in the criminal justice system yet. Because if I'm in that mode when they meet me in the courtroom, and sometimes they do, they meet me for the first time in the courtroom when they're coming in for arraignment, when they're basically getting the written charges given to them in court. For the first time, because I mean that can be very shocking to them, and they don't know how to take me at that moment. So I think you have to change your identity as a lawyer depending upon whether you're the advocate, the counselor, you know, depending upon what role you need to fit. I'm not certain that's exactly your question, but that's kind of my shot at it.
No, that was great. And that was a really interesting take on it, to be honest. So I appreciate that. Camie, I don't know if you have experiences. We graduated at the same time. And so I'm just thinking back to my own experiences as like a young 20-something year old at tables where maybe I was the only woman, or maybe I was the only person who was a millennial, and some of the things that came with that. So I wondered, like, specifically from your position now as an attorney, how that comes up, if at all.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what Jonathan said, I think that's such a fascinating way to put it, because it is such a relationship-based profession, both with clients, with other attorneys, your local bar associations. And so I think something law school doesn't teach us is you do have to be mindful of, tailor your conversation based on who your client is. Are you talking to a senior attorney versus a law student? So it's an unfortunately like one more thing to think about, but just part of, I think, the job. But I will say, I think having those 2 years in between college and law school, so I graduated at 27. So again, not that I was so much wiser than people that went straight through, but I think it did give me my own, sense of comfort in a way of knowing, okay, I've worked full time in an office setting before, and kind of having a feel for office politics, at least just being aware of it, understanding, you go from, at least my undergraduate experience of, being in a small school, everyone knows each other, it's all friendly, to recognizing, oh, there are, being in a workplace, there are a lot of different people in an awesome way that bring a lot of different backgrounds, experiences, expectations of your role to the table. Sorry. And so I think that was helpful as far as having an understanding and of kind of where I fall in like the office political hierarchy. But at the same time, I think, the great thing too about this profession is that, women's involvement in leadership is only continuing to grow, and being proud of that, and being proud of the increasing minority representation. Long way to go. Don't get me wrong, but just saying that this industry has a lot to do, both in advocacy work and also internally amongst our own ranks. But it's exciting. I'm excited to see where things go.
Thank you.
Yeah. I feel like as a law student, there's a lot of things I'm sure I just don't know yet, but it is interesting just going to all these firm events where they talk about women and our in partners out of all the firms in Boston. It's like, okay, what % of your partners are women? And it's like a third, and you're like, okay. But I don't know. I think so. It's a very skewed field in a lot of ways, but I don't know. I think it's just, it's so important to bring different perspectives to bear, right? And even as a law student doing some clinical work, so like I identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, and I do some work with the Prison Legal Assistance Project here, which is like a clinic at HLS. And we've had some clients who are trans, and they're being held in facilities that don't match their gender identity. And of course, huge host of issues. It really matters having different folks in the room who are able to kind of really understand what that means, and kind of flesh it out and be able to relate to a client on a personal level. But yeah, I'm not really sure how to bring these things. I just think it always comes to bear, right? Your identity and intersectionality, and it's so important to have a diverse team.
Thank you. That really helps add depth and complexity to that topic, because it's not just about like the professional identity of, okay, like the attorney showed up, but then like everything else in terms of the relationships, like you all mentioned. So it's 7:27 and I am mindful of the time. Do you have any parting words for alums who have already done the internship, or prospective interns who may be considering a SHEP internship in the future?
Go for it and good luck.
Yeah, don't let your fears limit you. Talk to someone who's done what you're thinking about doing, whether it's the certain internship or law school, because more likely than not, they'll encourage you to do it as well, because they probably had the same fears at some point.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities out there, SHEP being one of them. While you're a law student, there's a ton of opportunities thereafter. There's always ways to get involved and use your passion no matter what you end up doing.
Thank you so much, all of you, Ash, Jonathan, Camie, for your time tonight, and to all of our audience members, thank you for joining us live. For those of you who are watching the recording, thank you. And I look forward to engaging in subsequent Careers In panels next month and beyond. Thank you again, and have a good night.